Okay, can you see this Jupyter notebook?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you try to open the notebook I have sent through your mail. Are you able to open it in your Jupyter notebook environment?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Any doubts with other students? Okay, then we'll continue now. In the last class, we have seen how to work with lists and where lists turn out to be tricky and how to tackle that kind of situation without giving the wrong results. We have covered. Okay, now let us move on to dictionary. Sorry, we have stopped somewhere in the middle of learning list, right? So we'll continue with that and then start dictionaries.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
how to re-get the file, whatever we did in the last class?
How to?
Open our file, like we are
You
stuck.
have to see how I do that. First, you have to go to the home window like this. Once you open Jupyter Notebook, once you launch Jupyter Notebook in your Anaconda Navigator, you'll get a screen like this. Now you have to browse for the path. Generally, it will be in downloads, right? Whenever you download the file I have sent, it will be in downloads. So go to that downloads and open the file. Your file will be visible here in any of these file paths. So I have stored my file in STP day 1 basic. So when I open that, I'll get my file. Right? You can't directly double click on the file and open it in your downloads itself. You have to open it in Anaconda environment only, in Jupyter Notebook environment only. Right? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now let us, now tell me students how to clear all these outputs. Where is the option available to clear all the outputs and restart the kernel? Which option should I use here? File, edit, view, insert cell, kernel. In kernel, we should go to restart and clear output. Then this kernel or this notebook will be started by clearing all the outputs. So it will give us a dialog box where it confirms with us to restart and clear all outputs. So I just restart that to clear all the outputs. Now we have seen, I think, list operations up to here. List 1, sorted list, list.sort. Sorted list will render your list in a sorted manner, whereas list.sort will actually sort the elements of your list. And how to fetch the elements of the list using forward operation, backward operation, all that we have checked. Right? To display the list in reverse order, we can have this list start from any index number. Check this one, start from any index number, stop at any index number, but start from any index number means start from beginning. Okay, stop at the ending because you didn't specify any index number for stop. Then the step is reverse direction. We have given the step as -1. If you give step as 2, it will give alternative elements. If you give the step as 1, it will give all the elements. If you give step as 3, it will give every second element. Every third element. Now, if you give step as -1, it will retrieve all the elements of the list in the reverse order. Minus specifies that the tracing of that or fetching of the elements of that list has to happen in the reverse direction. Okay, that is why we have taken it as -1 here. So when you display that, you can see the previous list is displayed in reverse direction. Now, if you want to print only alternative numbers, you can do that by a step, by giving step as 2. Right? And we have also seen this. If you give -6 to -4, then we'll get the first element and the second element. But if you give -4 and -6, unless you give -1 as the step, it will not display any value because it retrieves the values according to index numbers. If it is in negative indexing, it will display only if the values are given as minus number, largest number to be, smallest index number to be given in the beginning. So you should give it as -6 to -4, but not -4 to -6. Right? The compiler can't trace. As I said, the numbering will be -1, -2, -3, -4 in the reverse direction. Right? So you will get -6 first, and then only you can go to -4. So in that direction only you should retrieve the values. If you want in the reverse direction, then you can give the index numbers -4, -6, but the step has to be given as -1. When you display a list and want only unique values, then you can use another data structure called as set. Set will display only unique values in a list. So if you want, say in a data set, you have some values in a column, say ratings given to a movie. In such case, some people may give 4, 4, 4, 4, some people may give 5, 5, some people may give 4.5, like that. If the ratings are repeated and you want to know the unique ratings given, means how many actual ratings are given to that movie. In such cases, you can retrieve that column into a separate list and type convert it into a set. When you type convert that into a set, that list will have only unique values. All the duplicate values will be eliminated. So one way to get unique values in a list is to type convert it into a set, or another method you have is to display it as unique list. Okay, that I'll show you when the situation arises. Here I'm just talking about the data structure set. Set is a data structure in Python which will store only unique values, right? So when you display this, it will display only unique values. You can see that 6 is not repeated in the list, though 6 is repeated. When it is type converted into a set, that 6 is not displayed. Okay, this will make you understand that set entertains only unique values, not repeated values. Now let us go to next type of data structure, that is dictionary. You all very well know how a dictionary stores data. It stores data in the form of key value pairs. The first, here you can see in the dictionary, A is enclosed between double quotes, right? That is called as key in the dictionary, followed by its value, separated by a colon. Okay, so you can see here A is the key and 1 is the value for it. Then B is the key, 2 is the value for it. I'm highlighting here, you can notice this. And C is the key and 3 is the associated value with it. Okay, so in dictionary, you can store the values in the form of key value pairs. Now, whereas in list, you can just store the values, but their associated keys are like index numbers. Okay, so when I say list of 0, you'll get the first element. List of 1, you'll get the second element. But in order to retrieve the values in a dictionary, instead of giving index number, you have to give the key value, right? So here you have create a dictionary, DICT. Now let us execute this. A dictionary is created now. Now when you print the dictionary, you can see the values are displayed. Key A and its associated value 1, key B and its associated value 2, and key C its associated value 3. Now, if you want to know only about the keys, if you want to display only the keys in the dictionary, you have a method for that called as keys. Okay, so when you type dict.keys, it will display only the keys in the dictionary. You can see that only A, B, C, the keys in the dictionary are displayed, right? Now, if you want to convert the keys in the dictionary to a list, you should be well equipped with all these functionalities, students, because whenever you retrieve data from the data sets, you may want to convert a list into a set, you may want to convert dictionary into a list, or say you want to count how many ratings are given for a particular movie. In such cases, for movie, taking it as the key, you count the number of ratings given to it. For another movie, taking it as the key, you count the number of ratings given to it. Those will act as key value pairs. Now, you want to plot a graph for that. In such cases, you can't plot dictionary as a graph. You have to compulsorily convert that dictionary into a list, pass that list as x-axis and another list as y-axis to plot a graph, to visualize the data better. In such cases, you have to convert data structures from one format to another format, right? That is very, very useful conversion in some scenarios. Okay, so for that, you can see here another operation what we are doing. Here, if we want to convert the list of keys into a, if we want to convert the keys in a dictionary into a list, how can you do that? Just using the list conversion, LIST. Create a list, assign it to make the compiler understand that it is a list. Now, take the dictionary keys and convert it into a list. Use the converter list and convert the dictionary keys into a list and assign that to the new list that is created. Okay, so when you display this, you can see that the dictionary keys in the, here you see the representation, they are displayed as dictionary keys, but when you converted that to list, it can be displayed as a simple list rather than dictionary keys. Okay, so you can retrieve part of the dictionary and convert it into a list and use it in the way you want. Now when you again display, you can see, right, the dictionary is intact. You haven't changed the dictionary. You just converted its keys into a list and displayed it. Now if you are interested only in the values in the dictionary, say you're counting occurrence of something in a dictionary. Now you're not interested in the key, but you are interested in the values. In such cases, you can use dictionary.values. Instead of dictionary.keys, you can give dictionary.values. When I execute this, I will get only the values 1, 2, 3 associated with the keys A, B, and C. Did you understand? Now, if you want to convert this into list, what can you do? Just use the list conversion and store it in a list, say list 6. Before doing this, you have to create the list. You know that no variable need to be declared, but when you are going to use a variable as a list, you need to at least tell the compiler that this variable is going to be a data structure called as list. Okay, that is why you have to initialize that first with an empty empty braces, and then use that. Now when you execute this and display the list, you can see that all the values are displayed in the form of a list. Instead of dictionary underscore values, you'll get the direct list of values. Okay. Now, if you want to retrieve the values at a time, means if you want to retrieve keys as well as values in a dictionary and want to display them separately or perform some action on them, you can do that by using dictionary.items. Dictionary.items will retrieve keys as well as values. Now let us insert a separate cell here and display vict dot items and put it in a print statement. Now see what is being displayed. They are being displayed in the form of tuple. Now when some data is enclosed in the circular brackets, then we call them as tuples. Okay. If you have two values enclosed in circle brackets, it is called as tuple. But if you have multiple values enclosed in circular brackets, then you call it as a set, but without any repeated values, right? So in this case, when you take dictionary dot items, you will have the values of the dictionary, the contents of the dictionary retrieved in the form of tuple. Okay. List of tuples. Understand this. See how is it displayed? It is displayed within square brackets, again enclosed in content enclosed in circular brackets. So we call it as list of tuples. Okay. Now, if you want to retrieve A separately, I have all the dictionary content. Now I want to get only the key values separately into a list. How can I do that? By putting it in a for loop so that I can go through each element of this list. So when I use for I, j, I refers to the key values A, B, and C. And J refers to the values associated with the keys 1, 2, and 3. Right? So when I use for I and for ij in dictionary dot items, x dot append I. So x I declared it as a list. Now I am trying to take the key values and append it to the list and display that list. Okay, so when I don't use this, let us see how it is displayed. When I don't use print, you just want to append the values. Okay, all the values are appended. Yes, no, instead of not displaying, let us display it as X itself and see what will happen. Okay, now when you display, you can display it in the form of a list. So what happened here? I refers here in this for loop, I refers to all the key values. A is appended to the list, then it refers to B is appended to the list, then it refers to C is appended to the list. Now that list is displayed, which displays all the key values in the form of list contents, right? Now if you want to retrieve only values, you can do that. So you have many options. You have dic dot keys, dictionary dot values, or dictionary dot items, which retrieves both the values, but you can still access part of those values, okay, by putting it in a for loop. So this is nothing but we are trying to just explain you in how many ways you can explore the contents of a dictionary. In how many ways you can fetch the contents of a dictionary, right? So when you display dictionary of A, which indicates that you're trying to retrieve the value that is stored at that is associated with the key A. In this dictionary, you wanted to display the value that is associated with the key A. So when you execute this, you can see that the value associated with A1, that is displayed, right? So in lists, if you want to display an element, you refer to its index number. But in a dictionary, if you want to display an element, you refer to its key. That is the difference, right? And you also have to remember that the values in a dictionary can be changed. They are mutable, but the keys can be changed. They are immutable. Okay, we know that lists are mutable, sets are immutable, tuples are tuples are immutable, sets are mutable. Sorry, sets are mutable, lists are mutable, and tuples are immutable, and dictionaries are semi-mutable. Means you can change the values, but you can't change the keys, right? So when you want to change the dictionary and the value associated with A, you can do that by performing some evaluation on that element. So when you take dictionary of A, it is referring to 1. Now that 1 you are incrementing by 1. Okay. So when you execute and display the value with the key A, it is modified to 2. Because here you are incrementing it by 1. The value associated with key A is being incremented by 1. Shorthand operator you are using here. Incremented by 1. And when you display that, it displays 2. Got it? Now when you display the dictionary once again, you can see the change has been made. Here, initially, A's associated value is 1. Now it is displayed as 2 because you have incremented it by 1. Got it? Now, there is another important clause called as in clause. In. In will indicate whether an element is existing in a dictionary or not. So in this case, if you give y in dictionary, means you're asking the compiler that y is existing in dictionary in the form of a key, then it returns false because you have keys only, you have the keys as only A, B, C. You don't have y as the key. So it displays it as false. Now, if you want to check whether A is in the dictionary, yes, you have the key A. In that case, it returns true. Okay. Now, if you want to get all the dictionary items in the form of a list, yes, you can get them. But because dictionary items retrieves both key and values, they will be represented as tuples instead of separate elements. Okay. Now, if you want to display all of those values separately, you can just give print ij in the for loop. When you give that, you will have all the values displayed like this. A2, B2, C3, but there is no connection between them. All the values are loosened. They are not associated. 2 is not associated with A. 2 is not associated with B now. They are treated as different elements and displayed as it is through a for loop after retrieving it from the dictionary. Okay. Any doubts still here, students? Shall we move on to the next topic?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now let's go to conditional statements. All these are very, very common statements that we use in any programming language. Their basic purpose is the same. Okay, you need not get confused with the syntax also. Syntax also is kept as simple as possible in Python. So when you want to compare two values, and if some statement is true, what has to be done? If some statement is false, then what else has to be done? That can be given with if-else statements. So it is same as you use in other programming languages. See here, we have assigned two values, 5 to A and 6 to B. and you're just comparing them. If A is greater than B, print A is large, else B is large. Only difference is the syntax here. If A greater than B, you have to give a colon, and when you press enter, automatically an indentation is attached, indicating that under this indentation, whatever statements you include, they fall under this control statement A greater than B. Got it? If you don't follow this indentation, then it is such a blunder that you haven't included brackets in your C or C++. In C and C++, you have at least brackets to make the compiler understand whatever are enclosed in those flower brackets, they fall under if statement, and next they fall under else statement. But here, this indentation is as important as those brackets. If you follow the indentation, they all fall within that control structure. Otherwise, it falls out of the control structure. It makes that huge difference. So you have to follow the indentation very clearly. If A greater than B colon, then A is large, else B is large. Now, if you have multiple statements to be checked on else part, then you can further go with elif. Instead of else if, here Python supports a keyword called as elif. Now notice this block of statements. You have taken three values, 90, 109 and 100. Now you give the statement. Give the condition. If A greater than B and A greater than C, then A is large. Elif means if you have negative to be checked, means if this is not true, you have to check on the negative side. In that case, if B is greater than C, then B is large, else C is large. Okay, did you notice here we are using the logical operator, and if you want to connect two conditions that have to be checked, that have to be evaluated, you can do that by using logical and, logical or. Okay. So when you execute these two, you can see here in the first case B is large, and in the next case again, yeah, B is large. Now if you want to use looping structures in Python, you can do that by again for loop, while loop and do while loop. Now if you want to print a range of values within a given range, say in this range we have mentioned it as 10. Yes, then you can print all the values up to that particular range. So when you give for I in the range, if you don't specify the starting value, it starts from 0. But here in the range, you have specified the ending value. So one element before that, till there, the values will be printed 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to 9. Now, if you specify the starting and ending value, that also is fine. You can just give here range 5, or you can give range 0, 5. Now, in this case, if you want to specify that you want to start from 2, in that case, you will get the values 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so range has 3 parameters: the starting point, ending point, and a step value also. Now, if you want to print every alternative element, then you can mention that in the step value. That is the third parameter for range. So when you type, when you execute this, for I in range 0 to 10, print every alternative element. Retrieve in every alternative element. But later, let us see what is being printed. First, it prints 0, 2, 2, every alternative element it prints, right? But here we have given another print statement. So first it prints 0, then it prints 0 plus 2. That is what is printed here, 2. 0, 2. Again, it retrieves the next element, 2. Because you are retrieving every alternative element, after 0, it retrieves 2, and it prints 2. That is printed here. And it also prints 2 incremented by 2. So it prints 4. Very simple for loop, right? This doesn't require too much explanation. That will spoil your interest actually. So later it retrieves 4 and incremented by 2. Then it retrieves 6 incremented by 2. It happens till it reaches the range 10. Means it stops with 8 because it after 8 it is incremented to 10, which is outside the for loops condition. So it doesn't go to 9 or 10. Right. Now when you take a list and print the length of the list, sometimes you may be interested to just know the length of the list and execute some for loop up to the length of the list. In such cases, you can use a method called as len, right? So here you are taking a list, and if you are printing that list, it prints the length of the list as 5. And for I in list, say if you want to print the list values by accessing directly the elements rather than accessing them as numbers, if you want to directly access the elements, you can do that by using in clause. Again, in will be useful here. For I in list, I refers to each and every element of the list, and when you print the I, it prints all the elements of in that list. Okay, so if list contains string values, then also you can easily access those values and print them. Say for I in months, if months is a list of all the months in the year. So I in months means I refers to each and every element in the list. So it just displays January, then February, March, and so on. Okay. Now you can also perform some operations on while using this for loop. Say if you want to display only even numbers, or if you want to display only odd numbers in a list, in that case you can associate some condition. Say in this list you have values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you want only odd numbers to be printed. Then you can give a small condition like this. For I in list, for each element you are accessing in the list, if I divided by 2 doesn't yield a remainder 0, print that element. Means if the remainder is not equal to 0, means if it is an odd number, then print that value. Okay, so it prints 1, 3, 5, which are odd numbers. Right? Now you can also take length of list as a number. Length of list, what does it return? It returns a number. It returns the length of number of elements in a list. That can be taken as input to a range also sometimes. Okay, so you can take here for I in range of length of the list. Say this list contains 5 elements. Now this is rendered as range of 5. Range of 5 will give you all 4 numbers before that, 0 to 4. When you type and execute this, you can notice from 0 till 4. So list is not directly being used here, but length of list is helping us in order to fix a range for this for loop. Right? Now if you want to use while loop, while is also same as you use in other programming languages. You have to initialize a variable, then you have to add a condition to it. As long as the condition is true, perform whatever is given in the loop. Now, when the condition becomes false, you have to come out of the, it has to come out of the loop. Now, you should not forget to give a increment value or a decrement value to make that loop reach this range, reach this condition. Okay, so if you don't give any condition, this goes into an infinite loop. So here when I give this loop, it just prints 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And say I remove this statement I equal to I plus 1 and I try to execute this. You can notice here in the number of this cell, see here in the number of this cell, it went into an infinite loop. That is why it is showing star, indicating that the process is still going on. How long this process will still go on? It goes on indefinitely because it went into an infinite loop. It happens in some cases when your statements goes into an infinite loop, then you have to forcefully stop it. In such cases, what you have to do, go to kernel and click on interrupt, right? So that kernel is interrupted now, and you get your number back, and you can re-execute this loop and check. Why it has gone into an infinite loop? Because no condition is given to meet, no statement is given to meet the condition. Right now, when I give this, it just displays whatever is asked here. That is, from 0 to 4, all the numbers will be displayed. Right? Now, if you want to give a shorthand statement using a for loop, you can do that like this. Say, if you want to create list of numbers, I don't want to keep on entering numbers from 1 to 100, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I don't want to do that manually, but I can generate I can create a for loop, generate the numbers, and automatically store it into a list. I can write a shorthand operation for that. That is what is done in this cell. Create a list A. Now, how this A should be filled with what elements A should be filled with? A should be filled with I, such that for I, how should the I values be? For I in range 1 to 101, means I should take up the values from 1 till 100, and those I values should be added to the list with the name A. Okay, this is a shorthand operation. When I display A, that is the list that is created, it displays all the 100 numbers. So observe this shorthand operation. This will be very useful when you are performing some processing of data or pre-processing of data, when you're cleaning your data, or when you want to create a new column in your data set. In such cases, this kind of operations may be helpful. Okay, now let us move on to matrices and functions, then go to NumPy arrays. We'll just move forward with this NumPy arrays cell here. Let's not discuss anything on that. Let's complete matrices and functions, then go to NumPy arrays. Now, how to create a matrix? Matrix can, you know what is a matrix, right? It is a two-dimensional table kind of thing. It will have rows as well as columns, and every data set is a matrix, right? Every data set has rows which will indicate, say, student details in the case of student data set, and every data set has columns also which indicates the characteristics of that data set or features of that data set. Say student number, student name, student marks, student percentage, student extracurricular activity performance, student rank obtained in PG set. All these are columns, right? So every data set can be represented in the form of a matrix. All the rows represent the data points, and all the columns represent properties of those data points, features of those data points, right? Now, in this case, we are creating a matrix of dimension 2 and 3, means 2 rows and 3 columns, and outright create the matrix here by using a shorthand operation. Here what we are doing, for j in range n, means for the inner loop, you fix the outer loop also with range m. So what is m here? 2. N is 3. So from 1 to 2, you fix the outer loop. 0 to 3, you fix the inner loop. Right? For that, you're creating a matrix. Now you can see all the values are embedded with 0. Okay, so for all the values from 1 to 2 and all the values from 1 to 3, means 2 rows and 3 columns, all the values are embedded with 0. Okay, you have given the value as 0 here. Now if I change the value to 1, all the values will be embedded with 1, right? Now if you give either I or j here, then those values will be put into the loop. Then just explore that. If I put j, then you will get 0, 1, 2 and 0, 1, 2, right? If I want a specific value, I can mention. If I want a separate values as I or j, that also can be mentioned. Okay, you can try this with different values and see how it is actually working. Now, if you want to retrieve in a matrix 0th row and 0th column element, that can be done by mentioning the not retrieving the value. If you want to assign a value to that location, then you can do that by accessing that value first. In this matrix, you are accessing 0th row, 0th column element, and to that element you are assigning a value 30, right? So that value is assigned to the first element. This is 0th row element and 0th column element. When you print the matrix, you can see that value is modified, right? This is how you can, all these are simple as you do in other programming languages. Nothing much differs, only the syntax a little bit. But the actual basic operations are the same. Now, if you want to define some functions, you know why function is used for, right? For modular programming, if you want to call some set of instructions repeatedly, rather than writing all those instructions again and again, you put that under a name and call that name, which in turn calls all those instructions again and again. Okay, for that you are using the syntax as def. If you want to define a function, you have to use the keyword def followed by the function name and the parameters you pass to that function. Okay, and whatever value you want to return from that function can be given in the return statement. Now, these are the actual values of x and y, and they are passed as parameters to the add method. So when you call this add method, this returns those two parameters added. The sum of those two parameters will be returned, right? So what value do you expect here? 10 plus 20, 30 is the value that is returned by this add method. In the same way, you can do some multiplication operation also. And you can also assign those values within the definition of the function rather than passing as parameters. You do that with a normal function also, right? You pass the parameters, you call a function without passing parameters, and you do some operations within the function itself without having to move the parameters to and fro between the function calls. Okay, all these are same as you do in other programming languages, right? These are all the basic Python fundamentals, what we have seen. Now let us quickly move on to NumPy arrays, which lets us start learning about the actual content for performing the analysis tasks. Right, let us go to now NumPy notebook. I'll share this also with you today. Now, why we use this NumPy arrays? You might have noticed in your Python subject what you have learned in your third or second semester, that you are using data structures like lists, dictionaries, tuples, sets, but you're not using arrays, right? You know that arrays are very, very handy for us in any programming language. They help us to solve numerous amount of tasks. But without that arrays, how can you perform such kinds of important operations in Python? For that, you have a library, specialized library called as Numerical Python, which helps us to create arrays in Python, right? So this is a package for scientific computing with Python. NumPy, Numerical Python, is a package for scientific computing with Python. This Numerical Python is a foundational package on which many of the most common data science packages are built. Remember, this is the basic operation for any data science package. So if you want to perform some satellite image analysis, image is nothing but a collection of pixels arranged in the form of arrays. So if you can represent something in the form of an array, it is easy to conquer and analyze that particular data structure. Right? Now, if you can represent image in the form of an array, you can access each and every part of that image, or you can modify any part of the image. So that makes your task easier. That is the importance of array in any programming language. And here that is addressed by using this NumPy arrays. NumPy provides us with high performance multi-dimensional arrays which can be used as vectors or matrices. Now the key features are of NumPy are n-dimensional arrays of the same data type which are fast and space efficient can be created. There are a number of built-in methods for ND arrays which allow for rapid processing of data without using loops. You need not use loops to go through each and every part of the array. You have number of built-in methods which can be used to access this n-dimensional arrays to perform rapid processing. And broadcasting is a useful tool which defines implicit behavior between multi-dimensional arrays of different sizes. And vectorization, it enables to perform numeric operations on multi-dimensional arrays. And it simplifies reading and writing of data from various data sets or to various data sets. So if you represent the data in the form of arrays, it is easy for you to read and write the data. Okay, and if you want to know anything additionally about this NumPy, you can go to NumPy documentation. You can just type NumPy documentation in Google, or Python for data analysis by Wes McKinney, or Python data science handbook by Jake Vanderplas. All these books will help you to read in detail about this NumPy arrays. Okay. Now let us see how to create rank 1 NumPy arrays. Rank 1 NumPy arrays means one-dimensional arrays. You know what is a one-dimensional array, right? It has only means it just has a row. It doesn't have columns. Okay, it just has all the values as a simple collection. Okay. So how do you create this? Before creating a rank 1 NumPy array, you just have to import the package in order to use the features of this NumPy array. How you do that? Import NumPy and give it an alias name NP. Without doing this also, whenever you use NumPy library, you can just type NUMPY. But in order to make it more easy to use it, we just give it a short name called as NP. Okay. Now use this NumPy library's array method in order to create an array with these three elements: 3, 33, and 333. Okay, and you're storing that in a array called an array. Right? So when you display this, and when you display the type of this array, what will be printed? You can see that the array is created here, 333 and 333. Yes. Now what is the type of this array? If you want to know the type of this array that is created, it displays the class as numpy.ndArray, n-dimensional array irrespective of whether it is a one-dimensional array, two-dimensional array, or multi-dimensional array, it is treated as an n-dimensional array. And remember, in Python, everything is treated as an object that belongs to a larger class, right? That represents a larger class. So when you take an integer value a equal to 1, then a is of type int, of class int. Okay, so here it is of type numpy dot nd array. Now you have created an array. You have created a one-dimensional array with 3 elements, 3, 33 and 333. Now if you want to know the shape of the array, shape means dimensions of the array. You can give print what is the array, an array, and you want to know the dimensions of that array, dot shape. When you execute this, you get 3. Okay, so here you can see only the rows, you can't see the columns, right? Because it is a single dimensional array. Now, if you want to access the elements by using the index number, you can do that as you do in other languages. Just refer to the index number. An array, display the 0th location element. An array, display the first location element. An array, display the second location element. So it just prints the first location element as 3, second location element as 33, and the third element as 333. All these are simple operations. You should just know which library contains what method in order to perform all these operations. Right? Now, if you want to modify the element of an array, you can do that as you do again in other programming languages. A of 0, you assign some value. Here you are assigning 888. Now, when you print the array, you get 888 in the 0th location because you have modified that, right? 888, second and third elements are untouched, so they just remain the same. Right? Now let us create 2D arrays. Let us create rank 3 arrays. Now observe here how we are doing that. You're again using the array method of numpy library, np.array. Now instead of giving one-dimensional array, you are also giving another dimension to it by adding another. You know that two-dimensional arrays of collection of one-dimensional arrays, right? So here also we are doing the same thing. One-dimensional array you are adding, again another one-dimensional array you are adding, making it a two-dimensional array. Now, important thing to be noticed are these brackets. If you miss the outer bracket, it will raise an error. You will not be able to create two-dimensional array. This brackets you should be very, very thoughtful about. Right? See here, array, this circle bracket pertains to this array method, and the first bracket indicates that it is the collection of one-dimensional arrays enclosed within the third square bracket. Right? So 11, 12, 13 represents the first row, and 21, 22, 23 represents the second row. Right? And 11, 21 represents first column. 12, 22 represents second column, and 13, 23 represents third column. 11, 12, 13, 21, 22, 23. So what is the first column? 11, 21. Second column 12, 22. Third column 13, 23. That is how the two-dimensional matrix is created. So when you print this, have recreated the kernel by removing all the output, so I have to add this. I have to import this numpy once again. Now you can see 11, 12, 13 and 21, 22, 23. The matrix is created, two-dimensional array is created. Now see here, observe the shape of this matrix. Observe the shape of this array. Another dot shape, if you give, you can get the dimension as 2, 3. 2 represents number of rows, 3 represents number of columns, right? So it is a 2 by 3 matrix. It is a two-dimensional matrix with the dimensions 2 and 3. Now, if you want to access the first element in the 0th row and 0th column, you can do that by giving give the dimensions as 0, 0, which refers to 0th row, 0th column element, that is 11. So that is displayed here. Now, when you refer 0th row first column element, it displays 12. And when you access first row 0th column element, that is first row 0th column element, it displays 21. You know that array indexing starts from 0, right? Same thing happens here also. So when you refer to 0th row, 0th column, you are actually referring to first row, first column. Okay? Now, there are many other important methods, like if you want to embed all the elements in the array to 0, or all the elements in an array with a particular number, or you want to embed the diagonal values in an array with some number. All this can be done with various methods under NumPy. Now you can see here, I create a matrix of the shape with the shape 2, 2, means 2 rows and 2 columns. But I want that array to be completely embedded with zeros. So I am using np.zeros. I want a 0 matrix with dimensions 2 by 2. Means a 2 by 2 matrix is created with all zeros in it, and print that matrix. Now you can observe that all the values in this matrix are embedded with 0. Okay, so instead of using an array method, I'm using a zeros method. Zeros method takes the dimensions, number of rows and number of columns, and creates a matrix with those dimensions, but embedding them with completely zeros. Okay, now if you want to fill an array with a particular number, you can do that by using another method called as full. Now this full takes again two parameters. The first parameter is the dimension of the matrix, and second parameter is the number with which all those elements need to be filled with. Okay, so when you use np.full, it creates a 2 by 2 matrix here and fills all the elements with the specified number. Here it is 9. Now when you print this, it displays all the values printed. Now did you observe one thing? They are being embedded with float version of those values. Float. Here in the first case also you can see here, instead of 0, it is displaying as, it is taking as 0 dot, right? Now if you want to get a diagonal matrix, what is a diagonal matrix? All the values in the diagonal index number, say where I equal to j, say 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, all the elements diagonally. If you want to embed with some number, that can be done by using a method called as EYE. Okay, so when you use this and create a 2 by 2 matrix, all the elements here will be embedded with, all the diagonal elements here will be embedded with 1. This is called as an I matrix because the diagonal elements are having the number 1. Okay, other elements will be taken as 0. Now if you want to create an array of ones instead of zeros, you can do that by using ONES, ones. Right? So here you're creating a 1 by 2 array, means 1 row 2 column array with all the values as ones. If you create a 2 by 2 matrix, you can get the values, all values embedded with 1, right? Now, if you display the shape of this example 4 array, you can see that here, though it is a one-dimensional matrix, means it is having only one row, still you can see the shape as 1 by 2. The shape is given as 1 by 2 because you have, see here the representation, you have double brackets here. If this is represented within a single square bracket, then it is called as rank 1 matrix. But if an array is enclosed between two square brackets, then it is a rank 2 matrix. Okay, so when I have just one square bracket, 1 comma 1, close the square bracket, that is called as a one-dimensional array or rank 1 matrix. Now, if this 1 comma 1 is enclosed between two square brackets, the outer square bracket represents it is a one-dimensional array and inner square brackets represents the actual row in that array. Okay, so the shape here is, though it is having only one row, the shape here is 1 comma 2. Right, you will further notice what is the difference between rank 1 and rank 2. That is why when you want to access an element, though it looks like a single dimensional array here, see here, it looks like a single dimensional array, right? If you just ignore the square brackets, it looks like a single dimensional array. And if you want to retrieve for single dimensional array, it is enough to specify one index number. But for a double dimensional array, you have to specify two index numbers, right? That is why here, as it is treated as a two-dimensional array, you are specifying two index numbers. In the 0th row, you are referring to the first element, which displays 1. If you specify here only ex of 0, it gives the entire one-dimensional array. Did you notice the difference? If you give 0, 0th element in this two-dimensional array is a row again. That is why it displays the entire value, the entire one-dimensional array. Okay, this will explain you very well. Now you can see. This will explain you very well the difference between rank 1 matrix and rank 2 matrix. Now, if you want to create an array with some random numbers, you can do that by using random.random method. Okay, in this case, you are using NumPy arrays random.random method and creating a 2 by 2 matrix with float values between 0 and 1. I have given the associated documentation also so that it will be easy for you to understand when you are executing by yourself after downloading this notebook. Okay, in this case, it is creating a two-dimensional 2 by 2 matrix which contains random numbers that are placed between 0 and 1, that are generated between 0 and 1. Right? Now, when I execute this once again, I'll get again 4 different numbers. And when I execute this at once again, another 4 different numbers. Means it is randomly generating the numbers between 0 and 1. This will be very, very useful when you want to check some hypothetical data. Say if you want to check some hypothesis, always some real-time data may not be available to you. In that case, you can't work with manipulated data also. Means you can't work with cooked up data. You may have to prove your hypothesis by generating some random data. In such cases, this random method of NumPy arrays will be useful to you. Now, if you want to generate any random number, say I want to allot some programs to you during your lab exam. In such cases, I want to allot some random numbers to you. So I can take this rand int method of random method again. Now when I execute this, each time say here 0 is generated. When I execute it again, 4 is generated. When I execute this again, 2 is generated. So random integers from 0 till 6, any number will be generated in a particular iteration. Okay, this is how rand int is useful. You have to notice the differences. Random dot random what it generates, random dot rand int what it generates. They're little confusing. So you can just try and see what will be the output. Based on that, you can just change the method you're using. You may not be able to remember all the methods. Not only these two, under random, many other methods are there. If you want only even if you want only numbers between 0 and 1, or 0 and 10, or negative random numbers, or positive random numbers, or both of them together, lots of variants of this random method are available. That is why you may note it somewhere, or you can Google it at the time of need. It will be easily available online. Students, shall we continue or we'll stop here? You'll be able to take some more of this class. Speak out. How is it going on? You're able to understand, or am I going fast?
No, I'm understanding, ma'am.
Okay. Shall I continue for another 15 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it interesting?
Yes, ma'am. It's interesting.
Very good. Okay, now let us see how you perform slice indexing. Listen to this very, very carefully. This is very much important for us to perform image analysis. Slicing, as you do in list, same slicing you do with arrays also. You have used slicing operations, right? You mention 1 colon, or colon 1, or colon 6. Means if you want to retrieve slice of a list, if you want to retrieve part of a list, if you want to retrieve part of an array, if you want to still retrieve part of a 2-dimensional matrix, if you want to retrieve part of a 3-dimensional matrix as layers, all this can be very easily done by using this slice indexing operations. Okay, so let us create a 3-dimensional matrix here. 2-dimensional matrix here with shape 3 by 4. Here we are using 3 rows, 11, 12, 13, 14, first row, 21, 22, 23, 24, second row, 31, 32, 33, 34, third row. Okay, so each row contains 4 elements indicating 4 columns. Okay, now we are creating this array by using np.array and storing it in an array variable. Okay, now when you print this, it will display the matrix 3 by 4 matrix, 3 rows and 4 columns. Right, now I want only part of this matrix. I'm not interested in the whole matrix, in the entire matrix. I want only part of the matrix to be picked out. I can do that by using slicing operation. How can I do that? Refer to the matrix, and I'm interested in only 0 and first column. Understand this carefully. Observe this first index number, what I have given, colon 2. Colon 2 indicates I'm interested in 0th row. I'm interested in first row, but not second row, because this slicing stops one number before, right? So I'm interested in 0th row and first row, right? Now, what about this column indexing? I'm interested not in 0th column. I'm interested in first column and second column, but I don't want third column again. Right? Now all those values I'm retrieving and storing it in another array slice and printing that slice. Can anyone tell me what will be the output?
12, 13, 22, 23.
12, 13, 22 and 23. What about other students? Did you understand? I am referring to 0th row and first row. Okay. So the third row can be 0th row and first row. So second row can be completely neglected. Now in this 0th row and first row, I am not interested in the first column. So remove 11 and 21. Now I am interested in second column 12, 22. I am interested in third column 13, 23, and I am not interested in fourth column 14, 24 can be eliminated. So what is the part I get now? 12, 13 and 22, 23. Unfortunately, I am not able to use my pen here, so I can't highlight it, but I'll display the output. You can notice, right? First, second rows are considered. Again, in first, second rows, only second and third columns are considered. So you get 12, 13 and 22, 23. Now, if I want to change some element in this sliced array, now I'm assigning 1000 to 0th row and 0th column in this sliced array, and I'm printing it. What will happen? Before, 0th row and 0th column element in this sliced array is 12. But after I assign 1000 to it, it displays 1000. But when I print this array again, I can notice the same change in the original array also. What does this indicate? If you are accessing a part of the array, making modifications to that part, still it is reflected in the original array also. Right? That is why when we are displaying the original array, an array, still the change that is made to the sliced array, it is reflected in the original array. Did you understand clearly? Right. Now let us go to other operations on this arrays. Now create a 3 by 4 array. Now let us take a rank 1 view of this array. Rank 1 view means you're creating a row rank, you're creating a variable called as row rank, and from this array you're retrieving the first row and all the columns of that row. What you're doing here, understand this. Leave about everything, assignment, everything. You don't get confused with to what element you are assigning, nothing. Just observe this highlighted area. What we are doing, from this array, you are retrieving the first row and how many columns? All the columns of it. So what is the first row here? 21, 22, 23 and 24. Now all the columns of it means, yes, all the elements, not only 21, 22 or 22, 23. I am retrieving all the columns of that particular row. Means I am taking out a one-dimensional matrix out from a two-dimensional matrix. Right? So when I print and when I assign this to a variable row rank 1 and print that row rank 1 along with its shape, observe this carefully. It prints a one-dimensional array and see the shape of it. It is not giving as 1, 4. It is just giving as 4, means it is giving the length of the array as 4. It is not giving as 1 by 4. It is not a matrix of 1 row and 4 columns. It is just a one-dimensional array of 4 elements. Did you notice carefully? This is called as rank 1 view. from a two-dimensional array, you're retrieving a one-dimensional array and understanding how it is represented as a rank 1 matrix instead of rank 2 matrix. This is very, very, very important for you to not get confused between the rank 1 representation and rank 2 representation of a matrix. That makes a lot of difference when you're performing image analysis. Did you understand clearly, or should I repeat this again? All of you? Deeksha? Sneha? Did you understand clearly? Good. Now let us go to rank 2 view. We have seen how to get a rank 1 view. Yes, by giving the slicing as, observe this carefully, by giving the slicing as 1, comma, column, means first row, all the columns. Now observe rank 2 view. What is the difference you noticed here? In rank 1 view, for getting it as a one-dimensional array, you're giving just the index number, but you're not giving the sliced operation. That is why the entire row with all the column values are taken, but still treated as one-dimensional array. But in this case, in the area I highlighted, you can see I'm retrieving the first row, but still as a rank 2 view. That is why I have performed, and that is why I have given the slicing operation completely here. 1 colon 2. Instead of 1, I am giving 1 colon 2, which indicates that I am retrieving it as a row which is part of a two-dimensional matrix. Right? So in the two-dimensional matrix, I am retrieving the second element, which is again a one-dimensional matrix. Do not get confused. In the previous case, I have retrieved here the second row as one-dimensional matrix. Means I have taken it as a separate array. But in this case, what I'm doing, I'm retrieving it as an element in the two-dimensional matrix, which turns out to be one-dimensional matrix. So I took this as a slicing operation instead of an index number. Now when I use slicing operation in both the index number values, I get a rank 2 view. But if I use an index number directly without a slicing operation, then I get rank 1 view. I hope I'm very clear to you now. Now when I say 1 to 2, I take again one-dimensional array and all the columns, but here I'm getting it as a two-dimensional array only, not as one-dimensional array. That you can notice from the result. See this. In the previous case, you have the array enclosed between one square bracket. In this case, you can see it is enclosed between two square brackets. This is rank 2 view. You can see the shape in the previous case as 4, indicating it is an array which is containing 4 elements. It is an array of length 4. But in this case, it is an array, but not one-dimensional array. It is a two-dimensional array. And how many rows it has? 1 row. How many columns it has? 4 columns. Okay, this is the rank 2 view. You understood the difference between rank 1 view and rank 2 view? Right. Now see here, in this case, here you are retrieving again a rank 1 matrix because you are using an index number in the column slicing part instead of a slicing operation. But in this case, you are using both index numbers as slicing operations only. So in this case, you retrieve a rank 1 matrix. In this case, you retrieve a rank 2 matrix. Right? You can observe that here. Initial case, it is an array of 3 elements that is retrieved. And in the second case, same elements are being retrieved, but as a rank 2 matrix. Means it contains 3 rows and 1 column. Right? Yeah, I'll execute these cells and I'll stop for today. Now again, you create a 2-dimensional array. Now, let us pick some numbers which indicates row indices and column indices and retrieve those values. Okay, you can customize in what way you can retrieve the values by using some other numbers. See here, you're creating an array 0, 1, 2, 0 and assigning it to column indices variable, and you're creating a range of values from 0 to 3 and assigning it as row indices values. Now you have one list of values as column indices and one list of values as row indices. Yes, 2 separate values. Now these 2 lists join together and make them as array indices and retrieve the array elements. This is one type of operation. It is not that this operation will be useful for you in all the scenarios. When some such situation arises, how this will be useful? I'm just trying to explain. Again, remember, each of these operations you may not be using in your case studies, but it will ring the bell whenever that situation arises for you. You will definitely try to recollect, yes, I have used this kind of operation somewhere. Right? For that, at least you have to understand. Now you have created a column, numbers for column indices and numbers for row indices, and just display them. What all you have created for column indices, you have created 0, 1, 2, 0, just a random selection. And for row indices, you have created 0, 1, 2, 3. Right. Now you have an operation, you have a method called as zip. Zip indicates that you can zip together 2 lists. You have one list, you have another list. Now you want to use those 2 lists together, working together. How you can do that? By using a method called as zip. Very, very, very useful technique. When you are working on 2 columns in 2 different data sets, retrieve those 2 columns, join them together, and you want to work on those 2 columns at a time. In such cases, zip will be useful for you. Right? So when you use zip, what will happen? It will zip together this array, column indices, and this array, row indices. Means you can take it as 0, 0. Refer to the first elements. You can take it as 0, 0 index, 1, 1 index, 2, 2 index, 0, 3 index. Okay, in that way, those 2 lists will be zipped together. First 2 elements can be used together. Second 2 elements can be used together. In that way, you can proceed. Now observe this. For row, comma, column in zip, what 2 lists you are zipping? Row indices and column indices. Yes. Now let us print them and see how they are zipped. Will be able to understand easily. When you print this, you can notice for row, comma, column in zip together list of row indices and column indices, print that row and column. What is being printed? Both lists. See here, the first list is 0, 1, 2, 3. See, these are the rows 0, 1, 2, 3. And next, the column elements 0, 1, 2, 0. They are zipped together. Now, what can you obtain? 0, 0 index, 1, 1 index, 2, 2 index, and 3, 0 index. Now use this for your array to retrieve the values. Means what values do you retrieve? What values you can fetch? From the array you can get 0, 0 element. From the array you can get first row, first column element. From the same array you can get second row, second column element. And third row, first column element. Okay. This is some random playing with the elements of the array. But the importance of zip operation you can notice here. Now, when you execute this using row indices and column indices, you can find out 0th row, 0th column element is 11 here. First row, first column element is 22 here. Second row, second column element is 33 here. And third row, 0th element is 41 here. So all these values are printed, right? This is how zip can be used. Now, if you want to modify all those indices values on this array, refer to this row indices and column indices that are zipped together, means these elements you are incrementing it with 1000. So when you display this array, you can see that this value is incremented by 1000, this value by 1000, this value by 1000, and this value by 1000. Okay, did you understand how to use a zip method when two different lists can be used together? Right. In next class, we'll see how to perform Boolean indexing, how to perform set operations, and important tool that helps us to recreate our arrays by using broadcasting method. Okay, so once we complete that, I think in half an hour we can complete these topics that are left behind, and we can directly go on to image analysis, satellite image analysis, which helps us to understand the effect of or influence of various parameters in the spread of forest fires in California region in US. Okay, that we'll do in next class. How is the class going on, students? You're feeling it interesting? Ramya? Manjunath? Vishal?
Yes, ma'am.
Vishal?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you feeling it interesting?
Yes, ma'am. Moving on.
Very good. Okay, then I'll stop recording and stay back. I'll take the attendance.